Well, thank you, Mike, Ray, and Melissa. That was great. And Mike was being kind when he said he thought they had some influence with the ZEC program in Illinois. To be straight, we would not have a ZEC program in New York or Illinois if it wasn't the support of labor and jobs, job creation. So it was absolutely an imperative, Mike, that you guys supported it. And we appreciate it. So I have a few questions. I'll kick it off. We've got about 20 minutes, and we might open it up to the crowd if we can get through these. So be thinking of tough ones for these guys. So the first one, this is kind of a to all you. We'll start off with, NEI is working to engage non-traditional groups and individuals who could see nuclear energy as an important, maybe means to an end for their own objectives. These are groups like environmentalists, academics, Silicon Valley. How do you think we could best capture the attention of such non-traditional supporters? Who'd like to take that one?
I'll take a stab.
Ray?
So Silicon Valley lives on competition. Competition's a very important element. So I think we should create some competitions with financial rewards. Charles Lindbergh flew to Paris not to do it. He got an award of $25,000 when he did it. So I think we could do the same thing with other organizations. I think science fairs could generate some activity there. You know, one of the other areas that I wish there was more competition or discussion is radiation. I mean, radiation saves lives, and it's the big boogeyman out there. And when I can argue my way in with any adversary on economics, on technology, and on safety, and all the other stuff, but radiation, boy, that's the third rail. So I think engaging groups to get that into our education system, creating competitions about it, it just makes people more familiar with it, and that's really what it's all about.
Great ideas. Mike?
Yeah, well, we do speak a lot to the environmental groups out there. We encourage our members to join organizations like the Sierra Club and try to change some of their thinking from within. We do know, like I said, we meet with the Sierra Club and this Blue-Green Alliance, and quite a few of their members, they do believe that nuclear power is a definite solution to help battle climate change. I know that not 50% of their members are there yet, and they may never be there, but I would encourage everybody in this audience to join some of these organizations and work, you know, almost like you're trying to change the view of what they're thinking from the outside, and you know, we got to worm our way into these different organizations, and we can make some progress. We're encouraging all of our members in the UA to join those groups and, again, work from the inside out and talk about how safe these plants really are. They are safe places to work.
Excellent. Melissa?
Yeah, well, Ray, you talked about familiarity, and I'm a second-generation nuclear industry person, and probably wouldn't have thought about joining the industry if I hadn't had that familiarity, which is why, again, I think we focus so much on that childhood education piece. But the other thing I'd say is we need to just be as vigilant as ever in having these passionate conversations that are authentic, including with people that we know are going to be challenging. I had a phenomenal experience over the past 2 years with a group called the Global Nexus Initiative, of which NEI is a partner, where we sat down with some of the non-proliferation community, people who have a long history of anti-nuclear sentiment, with the environmental community, and really quickly found that what started off as sort of wary conversations quickly yielded some real points of overlap and some recommendations moving forward.
Very good. Very good. Ray, I have one for you. You know, obviously we need the financial backing of Wall Street. We need investors to grow the business. How could we encourage more investors like yourself to get involved in the nuclear industry?
Venture capital comes in all shapes and sizes, from people who do early stage startups to large private equity groups who do massive deals. It's about time. That's a big deal, and it's about knocking down risk. So a lot of people will take meetings, and I know a lot of folks on Sand Hill Road there in California that do it. But I think the place to go really is to the family offices. When I joined Venrock in 1988, the Rockefeller family, there were only about 100 family offices in the United States. Today, there are about 5,000.
Wow.
Because that amount of wealth has been created in the back half of the 20th century. And it turns out it's a personal thing to make an investment in nuclear energy, and so you appeal to that individual, and they will allocate a piece of they will tell their people to allocate a piece to nuclear. And at Tri-Alpha, we have raised $500 million private dollars.
Wow.
And there's only 3 venture firms in the deal. The rest of it is wealthy families around the world. So you got to get out of your comfort zone. You got to knock on doors in places you've never been. You maybe even have to eat some food you're not comfortable with. But the money is out there and people are interested. So.
Excellent, excellent. Melissa, you mentioned it in your opening remarks, but everyone thinks of Urenco as an enrichment company, and you mentioned there's other areas of the business that you're in. Besides batteries, what are those?
I'll tell you the one that we don't talk about enough, because it's the one area where when we do talk about it, we find immediate positive reactions, is our stable isotopes business. We use the same centrifuges that we use for uranium enrichment to make depleted zinc that many of you are using for corrosion control in your reactors, but we're also making treatments and palliative care for prostate breast cancer. And we're doing a tremendous amount of enrichment and I should say de-enrichment for the electronics industry, including quantum computing. And these are very small gram quantities of materials that we're making, but nonetheless, it's the sort of business activity that touches a lot more people's lives in a personal way.
Impressive. Thank you. Michael, what in your view are we doing right as an industry? And talk more about your New York and Illinois experience, and how do you think we could leverage that across the other states?
Well, one of the things I was encouraged yesterday when I went to see the youth, educating the kids from K through 12. The woman that was running it, I can't think of her name, I apologize to you, but she did a great job. But she said that a lot of the kids in school, when they ask what happens at a nuclear power plant, they say, well, they build bombs there. Well, I'll tell you what, if you ask a lot of adults that same question, you're going to get the same answer. Well, we need to do a better job educating the public on how safe these plants actually are to work in. I would talk, a little bit, let's use an example like the nuclear Navy. The nuclear Navy is 50, 60 years they've been around. Never once has anybody been hurt on one of those submarines. They powered enough to travel the world 3,200 times to circle the globe. Never once an accident. I think if we do a better job in educating the public, the politicians will come around eventually. As far as Illinois and New York, our organization, we spent a lot of our political capital in Illinois. It was a real dogfight, but it was building coalitions. That was key to that. The Sierra Club eventually signed on. We had faith-based groups sign on. People from all walks of life. I think there was 200 different businesses that participated in the effort in Illinois. In New York, Governor Cuomo, he wants to be, he believes in nuclear power, and he put his money and his signature behind his ideas. And he's valuing nuclear power for not having any emissions, for not leaving a carbon footprint, and for helping out climate change. So I think we're doing a lot right. But there's still a lot of work to be done. There's many challenges ahead in some of these other states, and we're going to be in for some real tough fights.
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to ask 2 more questions, maybe 1 more question, and then I want our helpers with the mics to get ready, because I'd like to get your questions out there. And I'm going to give this one to you, Ray. Why is it important that nuclear startups have access to national labs?
Well, the national labs, aside from the fact that they're a tremendous asset paid for by the taxpayers, and they have capabilities beyond anything you can imagine, honestly, unless you've been there, you're not going to build a startup reactor in a garage in Silicon Valley or New York or anywhere else. You're just not. The health physics issues, the safety, the handling, all that stuff, they have that built in. Also, they have an incredible talent pool of people with lots of ideas. When I was an active venture capitalist, I spent a lot of time at the national labs, walking the halls, as we say, meeting people and stuff. So they have the facilities and the intellectual capacity, the computing power as well, and the startup guys have the startup engine, if you will, the grit, as we like to call it. And you put those two together, I think good things come from it.
I got to ask you, Melissa, where do you think advanced reactors, advanced designs are headed?
I got to tell you, apart from our own UBATA, we are a tremendous advocate because, first of all, what amazes me is how people get into that conversation. We've got people coming from the high-tech California industry. We've got people coming out of the space program. We've got young engineers coming out of their engineering programs who all have an idea that has a lot of viability. So we absolutely think that we're just ahead of that break point where we're going to start to see a lot of development. And that only, that's not just on the advanced reactor side. That spurs an entire new fuel cycle as well that I think supports the entirety of the industry.
Impressive. Thank you. Okay. Who has the question for the panel? Who'd like to go first? Yes. Yes.
I think this would be best for Ray. What you emphasize at Silicon Valley, one of the keys is fast, fast, fast. I think we can all agree that in nuclear, we recognize that it's slow, slow, slow. And how do we essentially merge our industry or our environments of work such that we may move at a pace that's a little bit of a compromise for the Silicon Valley side of investing, but also stay safe and meet regulatory requirements, slow, slow, slow side.
Well, fast, fast, fast does not mean cut, 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 corner, corner, corners. It just means make good decisions. You know the old engineer, there's a proverb in engineering, right? You calculate it in double precision, measure it with micrometers, and cut it once. Well, you can do that in the Silicon Valley. That's very fast. And if you set a culture of doing things in a hurry, and when I say in a hurry, I mean but safely in a hurry, it can be done. An example, in the space industry, I'm glad you brought that up. In the Mojave Desert, there's the Mojave Air and Spaceport. 25 space companies shooting rockets up. That's where Virgin Galactic has their facility. $3 billion of private capital. That's where the space industry, the private space industry, is focused. And they move very fast there. And they share everything there. Some guy has a machine tool that he needs, that this company needs over here. They just go down and use it. It's incredible. But they move very fast there because they share their failures. It's not a secret. Part of the slow is being secret. And that's not a good way to be. You need to be open. You need to put it out there for people to comment on it and get moving with it. Open source is the greatest thing that's happened to computing, and it can happen in nuclear as well for speed.
Thank you.
It's a good question.
Who else? Yes.
Hi, I have a question about partnering with national labs. Usually they're more closed off and they're kind of have their own thing going on. I was kind of wanting to know if you actually already had an in with them and if you were thinking that you're actually going to build some of these areas for that on the site and if you actually had something substantial like a commitment from them.
Yeah. There are several companies that have relationships with the labs. Oklo in Sunnyvale, California, has actually manufactured fuel at the Idaho National Lab, and that's the only place they could do it. And they needed to. This was for materials testing and things like that. So there's a thing called a CRADA or something like that. It's very expensive, very laborious, hard to get into. So Mark Peters and the other lab directors, through the Secretary of Energy last year, created this GAIN program, which is a speed line. So you don't really bypass anything. It's just that you get moved to the front of the line, and you get a little bit of money, and there's in-kind kind of a relationship with the startup. But you need to obviously have a relationship. Pick up the phone and call the lab director. Start there. There is a woman, Rita Barnwell, who's in charge of GAIN. She's she's online, email, and everything else, and she can answer all the questions you need to get access.
Thank you. Yes.
I just and by the computing centers at Oak Ridge are out of this world, and both of my companies have used the Oak Ridge computing facilities.
Awesome.
Hi, good morning. I was wondering
Who's that to?
I didn't quite understand. What was the question?
Most of
So-
the question.
What advice would you give a young nuclear entrepreneur trying to get their foot into starting a new company for new reactors?
A startup?
Yeah, what advice would you give?
What advice would I give? Sorry, the echo is bad right here. What advice would I give? Well, do it. That'd be the advice. Expect to fail. Expect to skin your knees. Maybe even break a leg. You'd be amazed. But don't give up. One of the key attributes of entrepreneurship, I believe, is grit. We called it leg drive, the ability to climb a wall, knock things down. You kind of have to make the rules up as you go. And I think the success of Oklo, for example, I mean, they literally, Jake just picked up the phone and called Oak Ridge. Now, some people would be very intimidated by that. And it's easy to be intimidated by that. But, if you don't try, the answer's no. And that's what you have to do. It's interesting, my undergraduate at Texas A&M, when I was there were 53 nuclear engineers. Today, there's 500. 500, 10 times. So I wonder what all these people are going to do. It's all about climate change for them. And I go down there frequently and talk about entrepreneurship and stuff, trying to encourage them all to try an idea or two. Fail a little bit, but learn.
It sounds like, Ray, by your graphic you showed on the Silicon Valley ecosystem, make lots of small bets. Is that
That's
kind of
right.
what it's all about?
Yeah, it's all about small bets, set a small goal, achieve the goal, prove you can do it, and then recycle again and just keep moving.
Don't bet the farm on the first shot.
No.
Anybody else? Yes.
Hi, my name is Sarah Scott. I'm a nuclear engineering department. I wanted to ask a question regarding New York. We talked about whether it's very green and light in New York for clean energy standard. And I wonder how you would respond to the dichotomy that we're seeing with Governor Cuomo, who is very supportive of the upstate plans, but very not supportive of Indian Point. I know there's a very different situation with the planning companies, all of that, but a lot of New Yorkers are very concerned about, and the legislature in New York is very concerned about the fact that Governor Cuomo is very supportive of the upstate plans and their impact on communities and how safe they are. He is asserting all these facts, but when it comes to Indian Point, it's dangerous and it's scary and everyone's just scared of it and there are all these horrible things about it.
Yeah.
And the community doesn't really need it. So I'm interested in how you would respond because we're having a little bit of difficulty helping people understand why it is that it's safe for us, safe for all the people there, but it's all in New York City.
Mike, you want to take that?
Oh, go ahead.
I would love for you to call
That's a
me
big
when you
question.
get the answer to that. Honestly, from most of the people in this room, obviously, that operate nuclear plants, we've never met a nuclear plant we didn't love. We know they are all safe. We know they are all well run. We know we're each other's brother's keeper in this industry, and we do our utmost to run these at the excellent level, regardless if they're right outside of Manhattan or if they're in the cornfields of Illinois. It matters none. The standards are the same. Politics and human fear don't always go hand in hand with technology in what we consider to be technical sense. So it is, and I'll let these guys jump in, but there's obviously a lot of pushback in that specific area, in that community, on not wanting that plant there, at least at the highest levels of the state. So that's the best I can tell you. I am sure that Entergy, who operates that plant, would love to operate that plant for 40 more years. I'd love for them to operate that plant for 40 more years, but
I'll throw some in there. I think the only person that could really answer that question is Governor Cuomo. And whether we like it or not, the word politics does come into the mix, not just when we talk about nuclear power. Politics affects everything we do. And in New York, Ginay and Fitzpatrick. I think we're going to be okay there. We in the building trades, we're still working on Indian Point, where we have our building trades president talking up there. The National Building Trades is helping out, trying to move the discussion along to save Indian Point as well. I don't know where that's going to go, but I do believe that politics are at work here. And we're going to, in the building trade, we spend a lot of money on politics, and we'll see what we can do there. But you can't win every single battle. The important thing is to fight every battle and try to, get a win, get one in the plus column.
Good advice. Fight every battle. That's good advice.
Anyone else? We can take one more. Yes.
A question for Melissa, actually. The prototype you guys are going to design, because it's such a small reactor, do you see that you think that yourself, you government funding? What are your plans to get to operate that?
Yes, that's a question that's occupying the executive team quite a bit, I can tell you right now. It's not a massive investment in real terms, certainly compared to the investment that we've made, for example, in new enrichment facilities. These plants are designed to be in the tens to hundreds of millions of dollars, not billions. And so the startup costs are actually relatively modest. So our hope is that we're going to find a couple willing buyers. Most of them are governments. We've had tremendous support, of all places, from the government of Poland. We have interest from the defense community, which is looking at forward military bases. But the point that we're really trying to make with it is that it is a small investment, and it's something that a rural community, a desalination plant, a backup data storage facility could reasonably consider.
Well, you have been a fantastic audience, and please join me in thanking our panelists for sharing their insights with us today.